There are remote control to move the Okay. Maybe I won't need. Oh, I
have
see.
some students
Okay.
on the stage. Drawings.
Yeah, well, yeah, at some point. Well, it's just the under control of the building. Good. I don't want to be too much under control so that they back down on everything else. Get a little bit. It's improving.
Good morning, everybody. So let's start our section of the series. Today we have the research for Professor Ula Koskalan. He's a professor in the family of the Department of Judicial Engineering at the Middle East Technical University. And also because of the curriculum that it's important to know that he was the president of the informed section of the institute from the utility from 2015 to 2009.
Oh, International Society on Multiple Criteria Institution. Informed section on MCDM, I was the founding president from 2010 to 2012. That's okay. I have been some taking some of these great work.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here today. We talked a couple of days ago. I realized that there was this series going on, so I decided to give this talk, Biases in Decision Making, thinking that it would be more appropriate for a general audience, and we will see, test the hypothesis at the end of the section. What we do in real life is actually, let me move on and show some pictures to you. Basically, there are lots of people who have contributed to this area, but I want to particularly show 4 people. Herbert Simon is a Nobel laureate. He criticized the economics rationality hypothesis. Economics literature says that humans are rational. Rational means that you have all the information on Earth, and you have the capacity to process all this information, and you will make the rational, optimal choices. And Herbert Simon says that this is impossible. We don't have rationality, but what we can say is we have bounded rationality. Our rationality is bounded, and we don't make optimal decisions, but we make satisfying decisions. We stop as soon as we find a decision that satisfies us. So, that during my talk a few times. Then, Amos Tversky is considered to be a brilliant man. He's considered to be a brilliant man and cognitive scientist. He was a professor in Stanford University. I had the opportunity to listen to him live. He died at a very young age of cancer, but he was a colleague of Daniel Kahneman. They did lots of research together. They have a very effective theory called prospect theory to explain human behavior. And that Daniel Kahneman later got the Nobel Prize in 2002. They probably would have gotten the prize together, but since Tversky died earlier on, and since the award is not given posthumously, he could not get the award. And I'll refer a lot to their work. And then Ariely is a younger showman type professor. He has YouTube videos. You should watch them. Very entertaining, and he has done a lot of research in this area as well. He has a book called Predictably Irrational, claiming that we are irrational in a predictable way. We make decisions that are irrational, and given the same conditions, we make the same irrational decisions all the time. And it's easy to read book. It's an easy to read book, and I recommend, if you like the presentation, the material here, I recommend that you read the book. And Daniel Kahneman also has a book, Thinking Slow, Thinking Fast, a recent book, which is also not so hard to read. You don't need a background. And he also talks about all these issues. Now, psychologists, cognitive psychologists say that we have two ways of thinking, system 1 and system 2. System 1 is automatic, intuitive, effortless, so it's like a reflex, and we use for most of our decisions system 1. It serves us well in most cases, but unfortunately, at times it fails us, system 1, because we do not think in detail, and we could make mistakes, and we will show some examples of those. System 2 thinking is when the stakes are high, and there are difficult decisions, we sit down and we make an effort to make a decision, and that usually uses some other parts of our brain, and it serves us well, but we only use it for not so many decisions, but fewer decisions. That's what they claim. Okay, look at this arch, for example, in St. Louis. What do you see? Look at its height, look at its width. How do you compare the height with the width? It is taller, right? How much taller? Quite a bit taller. But if I tell you, if you go measure it, the width is identical to the height. Do you believe me? You don't see that. You don't believe me, right? If you go measure it yourself, you will find out that it is identical. But then you will look at it again, and you'll still not believe it. That's not what you see. Now, if our eyes, our sight, which we have been using for so many years, millions of years, it evolved so well, is deceiving us, imagine cognitively how we are deceived every day. Okay, so actually you can find the arch on the internet and measure it by tape, and you'll see that I'm right. Okay, so going back to Herbert Simon's claims, we are satisficers, not maximizers in our daily decisions. Because we do not have the resources to deplete all possible alternative solution alternatives. As soon as we find something that satisfies us, we make a decision. We have bounded rationality because we cannot have rationality, as I explained previously. We don't have that capacity to be rational in the sense claimed by economics. We use heuristics in our daily lives. Heuristics means shortcuts in making decisions. Shortcuts in making decisions, and we will talk about these heuristics. And usually they serve us well, but from time to time, we run into difficulty with these heuristics. We discount the future, most people. Today is an order of magnitude more important than tomorrow, so we make decisions according to today. And we care about others' outcomes. What other people get, I mean, this doesn't apply to you individually, of course, but others. What other people get makes a difference in our decision-making process. And we may make irrational decisions because we are comparing what other people are getting. Okay, so in the first part of my talk, I'll talk about heuristics, the heuristics we use in making system 1 decisions, quick decisions, and the related biases we may encounter because of those heuristics. The availability heuristic is one of the most dangerous heuristics. The available information to us has a bias in the way we make our decisions. It makes predictable biases in our judgments. People tend to assess the relative importance of issues by the ease with which they retreat from memory. And media coverage, for example, has a very important role in the way we retrieve from our memory things. And that's why everyone try to get a lot of media coverage to get into people's minds. There are two types, ease of recall bias and retrievability bias. I'll give some examples. Participants are asked to assess their assertiveness. You know what assertiveness means? Claiming something, insisting on something strongly. When you have an argument, you're insisting on something strongly. And one group of people were asked to list 6 instances in which you behave assertively. So you try to remember 6 instances in which you behaved assertively. You insisted on an argument. And another group was asked to list 12 instances of assertive behavior. Well, for the first group, they might be able to find 6 instances easily from their memory. For the second group, it's not so easy to come up with 12 past instances where they behaved assertively. And after this, these groups were asked to determine, to assess how assertive they think they individually are. And here are the results. People who had to list 12 instances rated themselves as less assertive than people who had to list 6. If you can't remember 12 instances, then you may think you're not very assertive. Now, I have a suggestion, a recommendation for you. Don't ask your loved ones to list 10 reasons why they love you. They may not be able to find 10 reasons, and they may think they don't love you that much. So just ask 1 or 2, not too many. And at the end of some of my classes, I ask my students, list 20 ways to improve this class. And then they can't come up with 20, I'm just kidding. They can't come up with 20 reasons, so they think it's a great class. Okay, ease of retrieval usually matters more than content. Here's a question. Which is greater, the number of 6-letter English words having N as their 5th letter, or the number of 6-letter English words ending in ing? Well, for most people, it's easier to remember words ending with ing. But notice that the second one is a subset of the first one. Everything in the second case also counts for the first case, right? 6-letter ending with ing has N as the 5th letter. So the first one is greater, but it's very common to think the second one is greater because our memory works that way. Another heuristic, so that was availability heuristic, and the available information basically biases our judgments enormously. The representativeness heuristic is we make decisions based on resemblances to prototypes, assessing the likelihood of a specific occurrence based on the likelihood of similar occurrences in the past. This could be very deceiving. And there are quite a few corresponding biases. I'll talk about them in a minute. Insensitivity to base rates is a very common bias, and this could be very dangerous too, especially in medical and law cases, and I'll talk give you some examples of those. Misconceptions of chance, we interpret probabilities wrong in many cases. Regression to the mean, the conjunction fallacy. So these are all related in a way with probabilistic thinking. Let's read this. Lisa is pregnant for the first time, 33 years old. She's worried about birth defects such as Down syndrome. Here are the statistics. There is 1 in 1,000 chance that a woman of her age will have a baby with Down syndrome. So it's rare, it's quite rare for a 33-year-old woman to have a child with Down syndrome. There is a test, and the accuracy of the test is like this. If the baby indeed has Down syndrome, the test will correctly identify it 86% of the time. So conditional probability, 86% of the time. It's a reasonably accurate test, we could say, 86% of the time. small false positive. In other words, if the baby does not have Down syndrome, Down syndrome, the test will erroneously say the baby has Down syndrome 5% of the time. Now, Lisa takes the test and obtains a positive result. It says, your baby has Down syndrome. Given this test result, what are the chances that her baby indeed does have Down syndrome, right? Because the test could be incorrect. So given that the test says she has Down syndrome, what is the probability that she actually does? Any guesses? More than 50%? Who thinks more than 50%? Who thinks less than 50%? Well, we covered the whole thing. Okay, let me ask in more extreme cases. Who thinks